In this video, we're going to talk about mediation. It is one way to help resolve conflict. Let's get talking now. Hi there, I'm Andrea Adams, the host of HR Shop Talk. On this show, you get expert insight into anything that relates to HR. I encourage you to subscribe to the show or the podcast to keep learning from my smart and experienced guests. Today, my guest is Treena Reilkoff. Treena has a degree in social work and an executive certification in conflict management. She also has experience in a variety of areas around mediation and trauma-informed conflict management. Hi, Treena, how are you?
I am great. Excited to be here today.
Well, thank you. And I'm interested in this one just because I don't know, conflict is hard and we run into a lot of conflict in HR, and you hear people talking about, well, mediation, let's mediate that. And so
that's good.
Tell me, what is mediation?
So when you look at just mediation globally, it is an avenue for conflict resolution. It is confidential. It is voluntary, and it's where both parties who participate have the ability to have their voice heard, and they get to be a part of the collaborative problem solving to resolve the conflict.
Right.
With an independent party. The mediator is the independent, unbiased individual who helps facilitate the collaboration of problem solving.
You described it as dispute resolution. And you also mentioned conflict. I described it as a mechanism of conflict resolution. So can you tell me about those two, how the dispute resolution and the conflict resolution work together?
Yeah, for sure. So mediation is one of the possibilities on the spectrum of alternative dispute resolution options. So when you look at the lower end of a conflict between two parties, that resolution can happen between them without any involvement.
Yes, of course.
When a conflict cannot be resolved on its own, that's when the opportunity to bring in a mediator is used. If people chose, not to be a part of their own conflict resolution, have that voice, be a part of the problem solving, that's where problems can escalate if they're avoided, right? Because we can't avoid conflict. It's a part of every human behavior, and especially in the workplace now, conflict's everywhere. But if you don't address conflict and it's avoided, either personally or in the workplace or in the scenarios, then the potential involves higher stakes. And what does that look like? It could be, it goes to a grievance. It goes to a human rights complaint. It could go to litigation. So it is a low cost, time-effective way for people to resolve a conflict that they get to actually be part of the process.
Right.
And when you have conflict, it doesn't necessarily mean the conflict is 100% resolved. It's also looking at the ability to restore and retain the relationship. So a win in a conflict in a mediation might not be the conflict is 100% resolved, but in that process, the relationship has the possibility to be restored if that's what the parties want.
That seems like a tall order. By the time it gets to mediation, I would think parties are pretty entrenched.
It depends. Like when you're looking in the HR sense and what the business is or organization, like it's educating the staff in those organizations that this is one avenue to resolve conflict. So even if it's between an employee and their supervisor, it's a confidential way to kind of go resolve the conflict prior to maybe an escalation in a performance review or somebody quit, right? Because there's that poisonous workplace.
Yes.
So when you educate people on the avenues and the availability of being a part of the resolution, unresolved conflict has a cost.
Yes, it does.
Within business, but within people too, right? It stresses you out when you can't resolve your conflict. So having an opportunity or learning about mediation, that it's an avenue. And think about all the time and the money of all the parties, just not the parties involved in the conflict, but the managers, the HR, the occupational health and safety rep, the management, the owner or the CEO.
Been there.
Right? Yes. And then the lawyers involved with the businesses. So all that's a lot of time and money.
What are some red flags that indicate mediation might be the right tool? to resolve conflict?
There's so many red flags. So a red flag could be somebody has experienced COVID. They've been off work.
Mm-hmm.
They're now returning to work. However, they're experiencing some of the long-term side effects of COVID, but the manager or the supervisor hasn't checked in. So now the employee is kind of experiencing some, not only health and mental health side effects, but now all this additional pressure within the workplace.
Mm.
And they don't feel safe or comfortable to bring this to the attention of their supervisor because there's a power struggle, right? Or there's a power imbalance, or the environment's not safe. So the supervisor is not willing, could be one example, to go have a conversation and just check in, or the supervisor doesn't have the skill set and know how to approach this employee because there might be a history. So the option is, let's bring in a mediator to have a facilitated discussion and problem solve, or what are the real issues? What are the solutions that collaboratively the employee and the employer, supervisor, can come up with? That's going to restore the relationship, help the employee be successful in their job, and have the employer have an employee who's happy to be at work and is not going to go off on stress leave.
I was sort of starting to smile there because I was envisioning you're going to have the mediator in the middle and the supervisor on one side and the employee on the other side. And then the mediator is going to say, and how do you feel about that? Which I hope, well, maybe that's not how it works. Maybe it is. So tell me, how does it work?
Well, you know what? The setup can be that way.
Okay.
But how does that make you feel? That kind of sounds like a therapy, right?
It does,
my background is in mental health. So it could be a trigger for some because you're coming into that mediation already with negative connotations. You're coming in already with assumptions of how this is going to take place, right?
Yeah.
So when a mediation happens, both parties, it's voluntary and confidential. So within that confidential piece, that's ensuring that what is discussed in this meeting stays in the meeting. So a mutual time would occur, and now, due to COVID, depending on whether in person or not, it can occur on Zoom. So that's where the mediator would, thank the parties for coming. They would each kind of a review of the rules, kind of the guidelines of the mediation, what will take place. My role, as a mediator, I am unbiased. I will not take sides. I do not help form any decisions. This is an opportunity for collaborative brainstorming to resolve the concerns, the problem, the conflict. And what I personally like, and the kind of idea is that sometimes what the conflict and the problem is, the resolutions don't have to fit that exact problem, but the resolutions and the brainstorming can be collaborative and can create an acceleration in improving the workplace culture overall. So have an osmosis effect to everybody else. Because when there's conflict in the workplace between individuals, it does impact the other employees in the workplace.
Yes.
So after the introduction is done, then each side is given an opportunity to explain what is the conflict, their perception, their position in it, while the other person listens. And that's where the mediator helps to clarify some of the assumptions, perceptions that may not be understood. So an example of clarifying or statement could be, the supervisor could say, you know what, yeah, I have concerns. You've been back to work for 2 months now and you're behind in reports. What's going on, right? And just that what's going on, that's kind of a defensive statement that will put the employee into a defensive state and potentially have a trauma response, because we truly don't know what their experience of COVID and the recovery has been. So that's where the mediator would be able to kind of rephrase that and say, you know what, so what I'm hearing you say is that it sounds like you have concerns that some of the work is not being completed in a timely fashion since you've returned to work, and that has some concerns for me. Is it concerns for the person? Is it concerns for the work? Has the workload, caseload changed? Let's unpeel the onion and what are the real underlying root causes of why the work's not being done. And it helps to create that safe environment where people are free to speak and share.
Did we talk enough about how it works?
Well, we're almost finished. So they share their stories, and then they could brainstorm together. So this is where the mediator would, kind of assess what's going on depending on the severity of the conflict, right? So there could be, you assess on safety risk as well. Is there potential harassment, bullying? So based on that, you might have caucuses, and then you take each individual aside, and the other person's not there. And then you have a more heart-to-heart conversation of, how is this going for you?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? Is your story being shared? Are you seeing what you need to say, right? Yeah. And what are some ideas? Because sometimes that conflict has gotten to that point that safety is not present in the room, even to speak with the mediator. So then the opportunity to go into caucus to have that separate conversation with the mediator to facilitate back and forth, the collaboration and the brainstorming. And again, in mediation, there's no wrong idea to how to fix the problem, how to resolve the conflict, how to make the solution better, right? It's endless possibilities. So that's where no matter how crazy it might sound, let's just brainstorm together all the solutions and what does it look like and how will it make it work for both parties, so that when they walk away, that they both feel satisfied that they were part of the solution and the conflict has been resolved to the best of its ability by their participation.
If you found this informative, subscribe to see all the episodes and comment. Today's question is, have you used mediation personally or at work, and how did it go? Let us know in the comment section. Okay, so Treena, what does mediation success look like? I can hardly imagine they go away and they're like all kumbaya and hugging each other. So what does success look like?
You know what? The best way to give an example of success is a shared experience, a real life experience. Okay, and that's where I'll share my own. And this is kind of what motivated me to get involved in conflict resolution and mediation. So I was in a workplace and there was some discrepancy between myself and my manager. And we used to be friends, and then positions change. So then, of course, then your relationship changes. So something was going on, and my personality is I'm very outspoken. I'll ask questions. However, my supervisor at the time was more reserved and quiet. So for me, I felt like I was pulling teeth. And I got a performance review, and I wasn't happy with the performance review because one of the areas was never discussed with me that was kind of raised as a concern. So I went to my manager because I wanted to have a conversation, and, it was like, well, just, what had happened before and your role in this involvement in the union stuff and blah, 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 right? And I was like thinking, but half the stuff that was shared back to me was untrue and I wasn't even a part of. So I wanted this cleared up, because this is my performance review, as well as I had a good relationship with my friend, now manager, right? Yeah. And I didn't want to lose that just working relationship as well, because it was important to have a healthy relationship in the workplace. So I sought out the informal conflict resolution myself. And because it's voluntary, so I kind of share the scenario with the mediator. And because it's voluntary, so then the mediator goes to the other party and asks, do you want to be a participant in this mediation to resolve this conflict? To which my manager gracefully, accepted to be a part of this. So when the mediation was set up to ensure a safe, confidential place, it was away from the workplace. So we went there and the mediator went through the process and we discussed stuff. Yeah. Being able to have that conversation allowed us to have a safe place. It helped us to restore the relationship, working relationship. Yeah. It helped to clarify some of underlying issues, root issues that were in the office for everybody else as well. Yeah. Because there was no open communication going on between management or frontline at all.
That's interesting. And I can start to see what the business case for managers to participate in something like this. You're going to have a more effective team. You're going to waste a lot less time on conflict, and you're going to have happy employees, and they're going to be more productive.
And
So yes, awkward, and it may seem like giving up your power, but with positive results.
yes. And you think from a management supervisory, because I've been in those roles as well, if you think you're a manager, supervisor, and you're struggling with how to address
Yes.
conflict with an
Yes.
employee, and
Right.
you've gone to HR,
Yeah.
but you haven't gotten any skills or tools given to you of how to address that, right? By you actioning, going to a mediator to have a facilitated conversation or mediation to help resolve and problem solve, you're actually showing your staff, your employees, that you are invested in creating a healthier workplace culture. You're invested in what's in the best interest of the team. You're invested in resolving it, because we all want to go to work and not be in an uncomfortable place that's rotten with conflict. And unresolved conflict, you can feel that negative energy
You totally
in
can.
the office,
Yes.
in the departments, in the
Yes.
organization, right?
Yeah.
So it's a good opportunity to engage people when you're in that supervisory managerial role. It doesn't mean you're
For
giving up
sure.
your power of your being a manager, but you're sharing the importance of discussion and open communication.
So what is the importance of being trauma informed when you're engaging in mediation?
So what it means to be trauma informed is that it's not in the clinical sense. It means you understand what is trauma. What is an experience of trauma? So there's 4 different types of trauma reactions. When you're trauma informed, you'll understand if you're having an interview, if you're having a disciplinary meeting, if you're doing an interview and somebody's off, if there's been an incident in the workplace that has been traumatic, you are able to come in to have these conversations in the role of HR, or, recognizing when you're hiring a mediator that they're trauma informed. Sometimes a conversation or something can occur that will trigger a trauma response. And that's why the person may be perceived as they're aloof, or they're not part of the conversation, or they're distracted, but they're actually having a trauma response. In the workshops I facilitate, I give you skills to teach you how to help stabilize and have those conversations and ask the questions to bring somebody back to that safe environment. Because if they can't come back, then that mediation might have to stop. And trauma responses are more common than we recognize. Being trauma informed is a valuable skill set to help create that safe environment.
Specifically in mediation, what is or could be HR's role? And if someone wants to learn more about mediation, where would they go?
Those are awesome questions again, because HR's role, they can even take courses to actually become that mediator. But sometimes when it is the HR, because they are paid by the employer, they're not in a neutral position, right? They're still biased. But learning skills about conflict resolution, there's no endless possibility of continuous learning of how to resolve conflict. Opportunities of where to learn. There is, I'm actually one of the directors on the board for ADR Ontario. So there's various courses that we offer on there. York University offers a degree program through where I got my executive certificate. That's through Windsor Law School in Stetfeld. So there's various options. It depends on the level of, I guess, educational requirement or certification you're looking for. There's people that are offering courses online and you'll get a certificate there. For me, I valued the experience and the connecting with the networking through the Stetfeld Handy Group and Windsor Law School.
Okay, well, I'll add links to those in the description of the episode. Thanks, Treena. That was useful and informative. And now I see the value of it. I did an episode on workplace restoration, and the link to that is right here. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.